Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
and welcome back to the Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Cory Wright.
And I'm your second week in a row host, Adam Scalina. How you doing, Cory?
Good yourself?
Not too bad.
I'd say thanks for joining me, but I work for you, so thanks for having me.
Yeah. This is a funny scenario here. I see you on Fridays. This is your Friday casual look. You still look way more formal than anyone else in this office, but you're not suited.
Well, you know what? I feel comfortable around you guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like before, when you used to have me on as a guest on your podcast, I'd be at the tailor's the morning before the show.
It was a three-piece
getting
suit.
the new suit, getting the haircut, really trying to play that thing. And now we're kind of on that level that if I show up in a Lulu tracksuit, we're okay.
Is that a Lulu tracksuit?
No. This was
no. That's Versace.
Yeah, no, I think this is Kirkland.
Yeah,
Kirkland by our friends over there at Costco.
Well, we've got a fantastic show today. I can't wait. Is Mike Mackay. He's the president of Strand. Anyone in Vancouver in our industry knows who Strand is.
Yeah, no, incredible developer. One thing with Mike, and I think you'll hear this on the interview, the intelligence level of sort of foreseeing the next thing.
Yeah.
And we talked about that in Langford. Definitely right up there with a lot of the developers that we talk to that definitely have that. He's cutting edge. He's helped revolutionize their business. They've got some amazing projects. And he talks about the projects in Coquitlam, which have had huge success in the Burquitlam area, but the SkyTrain there. Langford, up to 1 million square feet coming. Like it's 80 acres.
Incredible.
Very, very ahead of its time. And I think definitely phenomenal interview. There's that word that always creeps into my vocabulary. Very, very good insight.
And here's the thing. If you are a young person and you're new in the industry, or you're looking to kind of get into the commercial or residential real estate industry, some of the best advice I think I've heard at the end of this show, and it's funny, Mike puts his money where his mouth is.
Literally.
Yeah.
And his phone number.
Yep. So stay tuned for that. But before we get to that, Cory, we are sponsored today.
Always sponsored by our friends over at Impact Commercial for all your commercial lending needs with over 50 years of lending experience. Reach out to Al and the team over there at impactcommercial.ca.
Seriously, and I didn't know Al until I met you.
Yeah.
But now that I know Al, he's a force. Oh, he's an absolute force.
Like I said this over and over and over. The guy saves my life because literally, I'm like, oh, that looks like a good purchase, and I write the offer and I go through my due diligence and I don't tell Al, and then I send it over to Al after, and he's mad, but he always finds a way to get me off.
He always comes through.
And I think I have to do a retraction.
What's that?
Because at the end of last episode, I said our guest this week is Byron Chard of Chard Developments.
And
Byron is next week.
Byron's next week.
Byron's next week. And we talk about developers that I owe a lot of money to, and Byron is definitely the top of the list. Mike is one of the few developers that I don't owe money to yet.
But you'd love to.
But I think soon enough after this, he's got me totally hearing his vision and what he's doing. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have debts owing to that man before you know it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll talk about two good episodes. We've got, first of all, Strand, and then we've got Chard coming
Vancouver
in a week
Island
from now.
Fully covered.
Wow.
Vancouver Island fully covered.
Unbelievable. So maybe without further ado, and just last but not least, the band that he mentions today.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna, I know you're a fan.
Well,
I hadn't actually thought about this band for a long time. I feel like they haven't come out with.
Well, what's funny is he kind of hesitated a little bit, and I thought for a second there, and you might have seen me, I got really excited. My shoulders went back. My fingers got crossed. I leaned towards my mic, and I thought it was Nickelback, and he pivoted. And I thought, almost.
If we haven't talked about Nickelback yet, is it even a Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast episode, right?
We need to get Chad on the show. We need to reach out to him. Maybe he owns commercial real estate for all we know.
Hey, He probably does. I'm sure he does.
Yeah,
He's got a portfolio.
You'd think so. The guy's probably got so much money.
Where does he store all those photographs?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of right now. I'm trying to run through my head right now and kind of use an analogy for another song like you just did there, but my brain's not working very well on Fridays.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, here is our conversation with Mike Mackay, president of Strand.
Enjoy, guys.
Okay, so we're here with Mike Mackay, president of Strand. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. Thanks very much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. We know you're busy, but a lot of our listeners are familiar with Strand for sure. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm president of Strand, and I've been in the industry for just over 15 years now in various capacities. I started off interning at various developers, got my start in a full-time position at Ani, and worked for another family organization for a short period of time before moving over and starting the development arm of Strand. Strand's a business that's been around for about 45 years and had historically been mainly a finance-oriented organization, but I led the charge into more of a value-add focus and a focus on really the British Columbia market. We are active in Washington State, and the finance side is active in the U.S., but our development activities right now are primarily focused in the Lower Mainland and British Columbia.
That's great. And we definitely want to hear more about Strand, but we're always interested how people get their start in real estate, Mike. Like, why real estate for you?
Well, I have real estate in my blood. My dad has been in the business well before I was born, and so I come by it somewhat honestly in terms of the apple not falling far from the tree.
Right.
And so, save for dinner time conversations and just sheer learning by osmosis, my start in real estate was actually as an summer intern for a fellow by the name of Mark Chandler. That name will ring a bell for a number of people out there, and not in maybe the best way in light of recent press, but it was a great exposure to the business and perhaps what not to do. And sometimes it's better to know what not to do versus knowing a whole bunch of the things that you should be doing.
Right.
A couple birdies in our Victoria office there, Mike, said that you were quite the rugby player at one point. Is that true?
I don't know if I'd go so far as saying quite the rugby player. I did play some rugby and really enjoyed that experience. Ended up playing for the under 19 and under 21 national rugby teams and made some lifelong friendships, and actually wouldn't have met my wife had it not been for that. So rugby has given me a lot, and really I think is a great game. And yeah, I played at UVic as well, and got to a point though where I had to make a decision whether to pursue what I guess would have been probably more of a pipe dream in terms of taking that to the next level, or coming over and getting into the business.
So, Mike, a lot of people that listen to this program are definitely familiar with Strand. Can you talk a little bit about the history of the company?
Yeah, so Strand was formed 45 years ago by my father, John. As I said, it was primarily focused on financing developers. Initially, actually started more repositioning rental apartment buildings in British Columbia, and then expanded in the 80s to include the U.S. And in the 90s, really got mainly into real estate finance. And we still have a value-add arm of the company in Atlanta, Georgia. It's been a great market for us over the years, and we've probably bought and sold over 15,000 units in that time. But in any event, the core business has historically very much been providing equity financing to developers in U.S. markets down the coast and in Chicago, Phoenix, Orlando, to name a few other markets that we've done a significant amount of business in. So, as I mentioned earlier, about 7 years ago this month, I formed the development arm of Strand. My background having been primarily in development and acquisitions, it was really just an easy fit, and I think a value add for the other side of the Strand office, which is finance oriented and really hadn't been doing much business in British Columbia for some time. So very much a synergistic situation, and fun to partner with my dad.
Well, I think one reason why we wanted to have you on today was Langford and that exciting acquisition you guys had there with the old raceway. Can you sort of tell us a little bit more about the acquisition itself, what the motivation behind it was, and why Langford?
Yeah, Victoria obviously is undergoing a major transformation, and there's a significant amount of population growth to go along with job growth that's being realized in the CRD. And queuing on that, we really looked at what is the supportive infrastructure that's in place to accommodate all of the businesses that are going to be taking root in the Capital Regional District. And, there's only about 9.2 million square feet of industrial property in the CRD, much of which is obsolete, having been built at a previous time with ceiling heights and building systems that aren't going to be suitable for modern businesses and really the modern needs that have presented themselves in terms of who the users are that are coming to the table. And so looking at that, coupled with really just the anecdotal stories we're all hearing of families relocating to Victoria, the quality of life being excellent, wages are really not far off of Vancouver, maybe 10% lower in a lot of categories, professional services being one of them. And yet the cost of living may be about 75% of what it costs to live in the Lower Mainland. So I think the value proposition is really there for a lot of people to relocate to that region. And I was actually just talking to somebody who said that there's a huge proportion of the new population growth being driven by people moving from Ontario. And as I mentioned earlier, that's really going to lead to a lot of businesses taking up a position in Victoria and the surrounding region. And part of the other side of our impetus for acquiring the land over there was looking at where can we find 80 acres of developable industrial land, let alone in the Lower Mainland, anywhere in the province that's close to a core city like Victoria. And we've been trying to find that parcel for the last 5 years, and it never presented itself for obvious reasons. ALR, land constraints, the conversion of industrial property to other uses like office or residential. And so that really was an impediment to us finding a significant beachhead in that asset class. And when the Speedway deal came along, obviously there was a lot of red flags around whether or not you were ever going to be able to unlock development potential of that land because of the Speedway. And I think through obviously just working as developers and hand in hand with the city and Stu Young and the great people at the city of Langford, we were able to unlock a really great industrial site there and hope that it's Victoria's premier business park.
Well, it's funny you mentioned there about how the relocation of people coming into the Greater Victoria was from the Ontario region. I was talking to another developer about some projects that they have, and they echoed the exact same thing, which was very surprising to me because I would have made the assumption a lot of people would be coming over from the mainland. You might get some people from Alberta, but I was really surprised to hear how many people actually were coming from the Ontario region relocating to Victoria, which I think was great to hear. I think the more people we get into that area there, the better.
Well, if you've ever spent any time in Ontario during the winter relative to Victoria, personally, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, totally agree.
In thinking about specifically about the former Speedway, what have been some of the challenges with this site in particular?
Well, it's got, for one thing, a large streamside protection area running through the middle of it, which I actually think is quite a nice feature and will be a great opportunity to provide walking paths and some greenery to complement the park. But that is certainly a challenge. And with that, soil conditions obviously are always front of mind for anybody in the business, and environmental considerations as well with the former uses on that site. So the usual list of things that anybody in the development business or investing in real estate would consider. It is a large amount of inventory, and people are certainly coming around to the notion of building industrial in Victoria. So I think differentiation is something that we're keenly focused on and hope to achieve with this site. So that would be a challenge, but we're confident that we have a great piece of land here that will be able to create a cohesive business park that isn't achievable in most locations, certainly not on the timelines that we can unlock our site relative to others, perhaps. So, yeah, I think those would be some of the early challenges. Of course, users and attracting local, regional, and national interest is something that we're prioritizing and hopeful of. But that at this point would be one of the things that we're working to overcome in terms of a challenge.
You kind of almost segued into my upcoming question here was with a business park of that size, Does the Vancouver Island market support that much inventory coming to market, or do you have to go to national type businesses and showcase Langford and showcase that? You kind of touched on it a little bit there. What type of response are you guys getting so far in that? Are you getting a lot of interest from companies outside, maybe looking to reposition or extend into the Langford area for maybe not the Vancouver Island market or even the BC market for that point?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a mix of local, regional, and national organizations that have a presence here. Initially, we've had early interest from regional and national groups, some being in the e-commerce space and really being driven in that context by the population growth of Victoria and the strong wage earning that is taking place there. So that distribution style user is going to definitely be a presence here and on a regional national level. We haven't exposed the project yet to the market in a widespread way, and we're looking forward to doing that in the next couple of months here. But the early interest has been promising, and with that, I think you're also going to have the local businesses who are more of a small bay type user, like a landscaping company or a building materials supply business, and really that's being fueled again by the influx of people coming to the CRD and the influx of businesses along with that are taking shape and setting up shop there. So I think we're going to have a really nice mix, and we're going to start with speccing some small bay product up on Millstream there on the main frontage, and hopefully that drives some further interest as well as shows people that this is real, this is happening, and it's not just drawings and pretty pictures.
What's the overall vision for it when it's all said and done? Obviously it's going to be multiple phases. What is your vision for the site? Like, obviously you touch base on small bay, which is kind of, sort of sub 3,000 square feet industrial. Besides industrials, are other plans for, anything from self-storage to hotels, retail? What is the vision that you envision for the 80 acres?
I think at this point it's going to be mainly small. Well, there will be a component of small bay on Millstream, likely mid-sized bays on the remainder of the parcel that's west of the via that flows through the site, and then being the streamside protection area. And then on the parcel, which we consider phase 2 on the east side of that stream of Millstream itself, where the Speedway is likely to be more of a large bay type format. That being said, we've got great flexibility right now. It's early. There's still a lot of opportunity for users to come along and help shape their parcel or their area of land on a build-to-suit basis so that everything is tailored directly to their needs, and we're very open to those conversations. In addition, there's actually an ancillary parcel of residential land that we're going to be likely delivering serviced lots on up on Trudy Terrace there to the east, and that'll be 50 single-family lots there to go along with 7 acres that we've dedicated to the city of Langford for a community center and some park space. So we're really looking forward to having that amenity to complement the park, and certainly there will be people working in the park who will make use of that civic infrastructure. There may be film studio space as well. We're taking a look at that. I think that was coverage we had when we were acquiring the site, and we're certainly continuing down that road because there's a lot of demand from film users for sound stages, or so we feel, in Victoria right now.
Mike, in thinking about Langford, we've seen a lot of developers move into the area, specifically with multifamily and developing multifamily. In thinking about the role that Langford plays in the region, what role is that in terms of industrial space, and how is that going to kind of complement the Vancouver Island and Victoria?
Well, certainly Langford's led the charge, if not on Vancouver Island, certainly in BC and maybe even Canada, in terms of acknowledging this major housing crisis that we're living through, and the fact that supply is really the answer to addressing our housing affordability crisis. And credit to, again, Stu Young, the council members there and staff for identifying the opportunity that they had with Langford to really drive growth in the region. And they've done a phenomenal job of attracting a huge amount of businesses and new population to their city through that. And I think that's going to continue. There's a lot of rental inventory that's been built there as of late. I think you're going to see more people make a foray into condos in Langford. And I don't know if that necessarily means high rises, but I think you're going to see 6-story wood frame condos, maybe even some mid-rise stuff like I know is taking shape up on Bear Mountain there. And I'm confident that that you're going to have a buyer for that. We, with Strand, very bullish on ground-oriented product in Langford. I think townhouse type inventory is really lacking, and that's pretty common across the region and even over in the Lower Mainland here. So we're actively hunting for more townhouse sites and would be certainly desirous of adding that housing supply to the city of Langford. But in creating all of this housing, it's, as I mentioned earlier, built a demand for businesses that are catering to the last mile delivery, so courier company, or they could be doing their own e-commerce distribution, landscaping people's properties, delivering building supplies, building materials, and again, even shooting movies. I think Langford's really put itself on the map in a big way and is open for business. And it's not just the people moving there who have acknowledged that, it's businesses as well. So that, I think, bodes very well for what we're offering. And there are other industrial offerings in or around our site in Langford and the Royal Bay area, West Shore, if you want to call it that, which is really how that would be categorized. But we feel like we're able to deliver a more cohesive park, accessible to Highway 1, and really in a timeline and with certainty that maybe is not afforded in some of the other locations that we're competing with.
Do you envision Langford as kind of being an industrial hub for the Vancouver Island region, or at least the south part of the island there? It seems like there's a lot of that type of product coming into that area. When, depending on what reports you read, some claims that Greater Victoria has the lowest vacancy rate in North America for industrial product, and then it gets even smaller when you get into the Langford area. Is that kind of the vision you think that Langford area will eventually develop into, with how much density in the industrial asset class is coming forward, and it seems like the absorption is extremely high?
Yeah, I think it's very well positioned to do that. Obviously, you've got the Malahat a little bit further beyond our site on the highway there, and that's a natural geographic constraint. It's also a notoriously difficult transportation corridor, and it's really closed down a lot in the winter for vehicular incidents, and that makes distribution and the certainty of getting your product to where it needs to be a lot more challenging. And so I think the next stop, whether you're going up island or coming down, is in Langford. And so I think geographically it's perfectly positioned. It's also one of the few areas that actually has land that's suitable to create a somewhat of a master plan around an industrial park. And that land's obviously diminishing and people are going further afield to find larger parcels. But we feel like it's a unique opportunity that isn't going to present itself very often, to have 80 acres in Langford, very close to the highway, close to Victoria, close to being able to get things up island. But I think for people setting up a large DC or a large industrial park on the other side of the Malahat as you get up into Mill Bay and beyond, you really do run more risk of not only being further from the core, but being subject to disruptions that are outside of your control. So I think that being in the CRD, very, very close to the core of Victoria, with that Mackenzie interchange now in place, the drive time's really been dropped at peak hours by about 15 to 20 minutes, which is material when you're going two-way there and back. So I think that's a game changer and really positions this parcel well to capitalize on that. You look at the vacancy rate, I think it's 0.88% in the CRD right now in terms of the last stats I saw, and that's effectively zero. You have 9.2 million square feet. We're looking at about 1 million square feet of industrial on our parcel. So that's a significant amount of additional supply that we would stand to deliver to this market. Absorptions, I think, have been around 100,000 feet per year. My question on that, I guess, is that partially driven because you just have no inventory and no product to absorb, or is that consistent with historic, perhaps tepid demand, less rapid absorption that you've seen in the CRD? I think it's very much the fact that there just isn't the product, so very much the former versus the latter, but we'll see. And I think what's nice about our site is we can phase it, so we can be very deliberate with the amount of product that we're releasing at a given time.
Do you worry at all with how much is coming to market and obviously what you guys will be delivering in the foreseeable future that it almost might be too much for the greater Victoria area? Or is that an area that you guys are that confident in through your due diligence process that if you build it, they will come type of thing?
Well, I think worrying is much like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but you don't get very far. So, all joking aside, of course, we are naturally concerned in any market that we participate in with absorptions and supply and demand and the competitive landscape, of course. So it's definitely on our radar. I don't think that the Victoria market stands to be oversupplied in the near term. And again, if we can continue to move at the speed that we're moving with servicing taking place on the site right now and getting our product to market as quickly as possible here, perhaps in advance of a big wave of the other inventory, I think we'll be positioned well to capitalize on a surplus of demand that I would say exists there right now. I also think that there is just such significant population growth, and not just any population growth, but population growth from people who are making high incomes, and that has a natural increase in demand that's placed on businesses. So there's also the factor of the Lower Mainland really not having any availability for any type of industrial space right now as well. And the fact is that I think you're going to see users being forced to consider Vancouver Island and actually realizing that ferry isn't such a boogeyman. It's with BC Ferries introducing overnight sailing to primarily cater to commercial traffic, I think that's huge as well. And the fact is that Calgary and the other side of the Rockies isn't viable for a lot of groups because the cost of transport is just too high to service our market here. So really, we're running out of options, and I don't think we're going to be limited to demand simply from people who are CRD users exclusively. I think we're actually going to see demand spill over from the Lower Mainland onto our site.
Mike, maybe shifting gears here just a little bit and kind of pulling back. Are there other areas kind of in the Lower Mainland or in the province right now that Strand is really excited about outside of Langford? And when I asked that, I realized we're talking commercial here, but maybe residential as well.
Yeah. Well, I think on the residential side, we're very bullish on the city of Coquitlam. We've got a 400-unit project that we're going through construction on right now, called the Oaks, and that's been a great project for us and really has been a great location in terms of working in the city of Coquitlam. Great municipality to do business with, much like the city of Langford. We hope to continue to do a significant amount of new residential business there. We've got 3 high-rises that will follow up the Oaks here in the near future, launching our first for sale in probably April of next year. So that's exciting. And we'd love to do more business in the Tri-Cities, other Tri-Cities municipalities like Port Moody and Poco, as well as Burnaby, New West. Very interested in those areas as regional centers. And I think you're seeing decoupling from the core of Vancouver and a lot more fundamental growth taking place in those secondary markets, which are quickly becoming primary in and of themselves. So yeah, we like being situated near energy centers. Obviously, people love TOD or transit-oriented development. And so we're no different there. But yeah, it would be probably Coquitlam and Burnaby if we could find a site.
Right.
It's pretty competitive, but yeah, I'd say Coquitlam is top of the list for us, and then any of those close markets nearby. We really think there's strong fundamentals and real demand from local people making local incomes, and so it's I think a strong area to be doing business right now.
Have you been surprised by the demand in the past 18 months?
Well, considering where we were in March, April of last year, and the conversations that were taking place around contingency planning and what we could get by with in terms of income to keep the lights on at our company and contingency planning and all of the rest of it, to see where the mindset was at that point in time relative to where it is today is actually quite shocking to me, and really is just further proof that we are a region being driven by local demand, counter to what many people think around foreign ownership and foreign buyers, which present a very small proportionate share of the buyer pool that we're seeing. This is very much a market that's fueled by people who are here who live here and who work here and want to be here for the long term. So, it's been a long roundabout way to answer your question. It's been very surprising, I think, for all of us to see the strength of our market, despite the dare I say, unprecedented times. That's been that phrase has been killed, but overused, of course. But it's the truth. So very very surprised and of course pleasantly surprised with that.
Your Oaks project acts as my children's education center on development, because every Saturday or Sunday I take my 4 and 6 year old to Costco in East Lake area, and we pass by it every week. They make a point of looking how much bigger the building gets or how much deeper the hole goes. And I try to give them a little bit of education of this is what it's going to be. And this is kind of what a development is. And they always just stop and ask if there's Spider-Man coloring books at Costco and all that stuff. So it's a great looking project, great area, phenomenal area.
Thanks very much. Yeah, no, I would just add, actually, it's a great project to use as that type of case study, because we've got 3 buildings going up side by side, and one of them is still a hole, of course, and then we've got the first one that is just about to complete here in November, December of this year. So you really see the full life cycle of a construction site on that property, and it's very dynamic. So lots of fun, and really couldn't do it without our team here, but also the great group of people over at Axiom Builders. They're first class. Well,
my 6-year-old, my oldest guy, keeps looking at the veterinarian clinic on the corner there. It looks like they're holding out, and he keeps saying, like, that guy's building, their time is coming every time we drive by, because there's the one corner guy. You kind of touched on this just a little bit, and we asked sort of everyone from the development community, how has COVID really affected your business, and what changes did you maybe make during COVID that you'll now keep as part of your business model, whether it be from the development side on the back end to maybe even the sales on the front end? And I mean, what maybe has gone by the wayside now that was maybe a pre-COVID type strategy or a pre-COVID type operational strategy we had that just no longer will work moving forward?
Yeah, great question. I think digitization and the ability to really work from wherever you are without the productivity level dropping off and having all of the implements you need regardless of where you're situated, that's been huge. I don't personally think that a hybrid or remote work model is sustainable for us in our business. We're a very collaborative company, a lot of quote unquote collision points that are taking place in the office where people are just organically collaborating and creating through simply being in the same space and crossing paths. I think that the formality of sending an email, even picking up the phone, can be a barrier to entry that sometimes prevents people from having great ideas and voicing them. So I think we need to be physically in the same presence, and that will continue. However, we've deployed what we're calling Strand Cares, and that's really an employee recognition program where we're recognizing that our team is very capable. We've got sharp people here who are passionate about what they do. And, if you want to go and spend 2 days a month and work remotely, then we would encourage that if that's going to ultimately be the best way to get your best work product done. And so there's that. There's micro agility that we're allowing now more formally. We always have said to people, if you have a doctor's appointment, don't take a vacation day, go and just take care of yourself. So a focus on wellness has really been, I think, front and center for everybody, particularly given the nature of the crisis we're going through with it being a health related pandemic. So that would be a change we've made. We've also deployed a $1,000 a year allowance for people to contribute towards wellness, whether they want to use that to buy a Peloton or go to a meditation class or everything in between. We encourage that and want to support our people in being able to be the best form of themselves that they can be. So those have been really introspective, focused things that, because our team has really just shone in the midst of this pandemic, we've focused on, and I think giving that flexibility is something that a lot of organizations are doing in terms of where people are working. So that's been a change. Again, digitization of our processes internally. I think one thing we really loved seeing was inspectors who were doing inspections by FaceTime. So instead of calling the city and saying, oh, well, we'll be there in 2 days, it's like, oh, well, no, I don't need to get in my car and drive there and carve out the time to do that. I can do this all on FaceTime. So I hope those types of things where it's just practical efficiency that's being deployed continue to stick around post-COVID. From a sales perspective, we went fully digital right from the start of the pandemic, and actually surprisingly saw a great deal of traction from people who were not even setting foot in our presentation center at the outset there, but were relying on Matterport, so sort of 3D digital walkthrough technology, as well as video technology that we deployed so that people could feel like they were actually walking through our sales center and getting the true user experience that we try to provide for each of our customers.
That's awesome. Maybe as a final question, we'll ask you to take out your crystal ball, Mike. Any predictions for the residential commercial market for the last quarter here in 2021, and then any thoughts on 2022 for the market?
Well, somebody once said to me, there's two types of people, those who don't know and those who don't know they don't know. So I like to think that I'm one of the people who know that they don't know. But in any event, I would say that we're going to continue with the strength we've seen. Talking to a number of people, they've continued to do record business here in the first half of 2021. They had done record business, and they've seen that continue here into this third quarter. So I think you're going to see that continue into 2022, and rates may start to tick up here in the near future. Again, debating inflation is one of those fool's errands, I would call it, where inflation happens when you don't expect it, and could happen at any time. I think we see inflation in building materials. We see inflation in the cost of everything from food to housing. And so there is inflation in our economy. It's just how sustained and how significant is that going to be? And will that offset a lot of the headwinds that we have in other sectors of our economy, as you see in the most recent the most recent GDP numbers? So I think we still have a lot of headwinds. I think that's going to create continued monetary support, low interest rates, which obviously are all very conducive to appreciating real estate values. So I don't see that changing. We've got a supply-demand imbalance in everything from multifamily to industrial space. Office, is maybe a different beast that in some pockets will have some oversupply, but I still think that it will be a resilient asset class here as we continue to see record immigration and a lot of higher paying jobs setting foot in Vancouver. So I see continued strength, and I think that if there was ever sort of a time when things may plateau, in my mind, it may take place in the second half or fourth quarter of 2022. And that would be when I think things could trail off or subside a little bit. But I don't by any means see that being a deterioration in values or a recession in real estate values. I think we had a white hot market a few months ago. I think we've got a red hot market right now. I think it'll still be a hot market, but just maybe not as hot as it is right now. And that may actually be a good thing, just to bring a bit more of a cadence back to valuations and lease rates and the rest of it. But I don't know in the industrial side if we have a solution that's achievable locally. I just think we're too land constrained, and we're in real trouble in terms of our regional economy with regards to the total lack of ability to grow our economy through allowing new users to set up their businesses here. And if we don't create more industrial space, they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to go to Calgary or down south, or just simply have to look at another region. It's a problem that's endemic in a lot of places across North America. I appreciate that, but I think we are particularly challenged due to geographic constraints here, and the ALR is a huge part of that.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I'm going to second your opinion because I think you're bang on. Mike, we got a 6 lighthearted questions so we can sort of peel back the layers of who you are outside of the office. Do you have just a couple more minutes to hang out with us?
Oh, of course. No, this has been a lot of fun.
So we've got the 6-pack powered by Red Point Law for all your commercial legal needs, from commercial leases to commercial closings. And now they have the capability for developer work as well. Visit them at redpointlaw.ca. All right, Mike, first question up. Favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie. Heat.
Oh, that's a good one. Wow, we haven't had Heat.
We haven't had that one yet. That's a good movie.
That's a great movie.
That's a good movie.
Second question is, do you have a favorite quote or a saying that you like to live by?
Yeah, I'm spiritual guy, and consider myself a Christian. Of course, to each their own, but there's a passage in the Bible, and I try to live my life by it, and that's unto whomsoever much is given, much shall be expected. So I feel like I've been given a whole host of opportunities in my life, and was very fortunate to be born into the situation that I was. And with that, it's incumbent upon me to make something of it, and to use that opportunity to leave the world a better place, and hopefully make a positive impact.
A lot of respect for people that kind of have fortunate situations and make them even better for other people behind them, and not just taking it for granted. So a lot of respect for you for doing that. Number 3, a book you'd recommend our listeners read. Doesn't have to be a real estate book either.
Well, actually, a really fun and interesting real estate book I just read was "Am I Being Too Subtle" by Sam Zell, and I found that to be a great rendition of his career, and just some of the fun stories that he's experienced and the relationships that he's created along the way. So really enjoyed that book, and highly recommend it for anybody who's looking for an easy read, but yet still topical to real estate.
It's funny you say that. I just started that one on Audible not even 3 days ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just started. Jordan McDonald,
and
a previous guest we had. Yeah, a previous guest we had, he referenced it. And then I went and I downloaded it then, and I just finished my last book and just started it. So far, so good. The guy's very opinionated, very straight to the point. You got to respect that.
Are you an Audible guy, Mike?
You know what? I'm actually looking at a bookshelf right now with old-fashioned paperback and hardcover books looking at it. So I haven't gotten on the Audible train. I like, of course, podcasts, but I do like the texture of holding a book in my hand. And another one, in addition to Am I Being Too Subtle, is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I think
amazing
for negotiation, that's an awesome book as well.
Amazing book. That sort of circulated amongst our offices. One of our brokers, I think in our New West office or our Langley office, had listened to it. And I thought, who is this guy? And then when he sort of references how he's an ex-FBI negotiator, that if there's 5 hostages and I only get 3 out, that's not a win if 2 die. And then you're kind of like, that's actually a good way to look at it. That's one of my favorite books of all time. Highly recommend.
We just had Cam Good from Key Marketing on, and that was his favorite book as well. So
it's a great. You'd be amazed too. He talks all about strategy and how they got to get these people out of these situations, and sometimes they're almost overthinking it and some of the very basics. It's great. Highly recommend that book.
Awesome.
Well, and as in most things in life, it's all about psychology, and the counterintuitive ways of addressing situations that the knee jerk may be one thing, and yet you have to really train your mind to react differently. It's a fascinating psychological piece that he touches on as well there.
The one thing I don't think my wife listens to this podcast, but the mirroring strategy that he talks about in that book gets you out of every argument you can think of. So you got to listen to the book. You use that with your wife, gets you off every time. All right, Mike, here's the big question that really tells us who you are. Favorite band or musician for that matter?
Oh, favorite band. There's a bunch.
We got time. I think,
well, I don't want to create too much radio silence here for the listeners, but I love U2. I don't know. I've always loved U2, and if I had one band that I could go see, before I die, I would say U2.
Nice. I saw them at Rogers Arena probably in like 2008 or 2009, and I got dragged to the concert. Didn't even literally free tickets. Didn't want to go. Left that concert. This is back in the old days. I think on the way home, I was breaking into Future Shop to buy every U2 album. I was just hooked. And I had the DVDs and everything. Great band.
Yeah.
Second last question here. What is your favorite vacation spot?
France. Yeah, France is for sure the spot. We love the south of France, and then Paris is probably my favorite city. I actually had my first kiss with my wife, and then 3 years later we that's where I proposed to her. So
Wow.
Nice.
fond spot in my heart, and love going back. We did our honeymoon through France, and so looking forward to hopefully getting over there next summer.
Well, I guess that shows up my Denny's proposal I did. All right, Mike, last question. A piece of advice for our listeners, maybe looking to getting into the commercial real estate realm in some capacity, whether it be on a purchase standpoint or a tenant. What is one piece of advice you can give maybe a novice person looking to enter the commercial real estate world?
Well, I think for starters, don't assume that sending somebody an email or cold calling them to set up a time for a call or a meeting is going to go unresponded to. I think that I get emails and contacted by young people who are just looking for some thoughts on how to get into the business, and I take a lot of pleasure in engaging with those people. And so don't assume that the presidents of real estate organizations aren't going to return your call. Reach out and take the first step. I think once that's done, canvass as many of those people as you can. But the advice I give people is really it's the same that I got when I was asking questions of people like Andrew Grant and Eric Carlson and Peter Wessick. I met with them before I actually landed at Ani, and it was a range of different feedback between go back to school, get some letters next to your name, and that works for some people. I think when you have a candidate who comes with an accreditation, like an architectural accreditation, for instance, in development, that's very attractive. Go into brokerage, into your line of business. No better way to see not only deals, but also the psychology behind what factors into the decisions that real estate organizations and developers make. And then really there's the other option, and that's what ended up happening for me, which was just simply getting in front of enough of those senior leaders in different development companies, and eventually having the fortune, the luck, really to have one offer me a job. So I would really just go into those meetings though with one question, and that is, if you were me, what would you do? And don't position it as if you're soliciting them for a job, but certainly leave your resume on the way out, and you'd be surprised with the dividends that can pay.
That's fantastic advice. And we've talked about taking action on this show. That's been a consistent theme. So yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Mike. Super useful conversation. Really enjoyed it. And how can people find out more about Strand?
Well, stranddev.com, stranddev.com is our website. And there's a bit of a revamp going there. It's going to be launching here in the next couple of months, but that's a great initial place to learn more about us. And certainly, if anybody ever wanted to reach out and learn more directly, you can call me at 604-262-9800. 262-9800 is our phone line. And I'm going to practice what I preach. If you give me a call, I'd be happy to have a conversation. And if I'm not around, of course, I'll return it. So the line is open.
That's great. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time today and sort of unpacking what you guys are doing in Langford and just all over the province. It's really exciting stuff, and we really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much, Mike. Take care. There you have it, folks. Our interview, Mike Mackay, president of Strand. I'm lacking words right now, so I'm going to have to fill it in with phenomenal, but great episode. Very intelligent guy. Very intelligent.
I love that. There's so many great points that came out of that conversation and his insight just into the region in general. But really at the end, the best part was the advice for young entrepreneurs, young people entering our industry. And man, I think like most of the success that I've ever had in my life has been from doing just that, reaching out to people that you don't expect to hear back from them. And then surprisingly, you do hear back from them and it creates an opportunity. Well, almost always.
Yeah. Well, I emailed Mike and I told him I have the most phenomenal development opportunity. He has to call me right away.
Yeah.
He calls.
Next thing he knows, he's on the Vancouver
Then
commercial.
I'm like, hey, Mike, what are you doing in 2 Fridays from now at 10:30? He's like, what? I'm like, you want to come on a podcast?
He's like, I'll give my number out on your podcast, but Cory, you've been blocked.
Yeah. I was wondering why my emails were getting bounced back before the recording this morning. Just like, hey, are we on? And they kept coming back to me saying he doesn't want to talk to you.
Well, you know what? 2 fantastic weeks of episodes. Like you said at the beginning of the show, we have next week, we have Byron Chard.
Chard, yeah.
And Chard is making huge moves in the province.
Yeah.
Phenomenal development company. And Byron, one of the nicest guys I think we've ever had on Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. Yeah. Just a super nice guy all around.
Too nice to be a developer.
In a weird way,
nice to be a developer.
The public perception of developers versus Byron Chard, it couldn't be more night and day, right? It's I
will tell you that I've bought a lot of product from Byron over the years.
Yeah.
And negotiating with them, that's a whole different story.
That's when he changed. He's
got the poker face on. He sets you up to choke yourself out, and then he just goes in for the kill, and you pay more than you want to. But Yeah, he's nice on the surface, but negotiating with him's a different story.
He's read Never Split the Difference.
Yeah. I think he wrote the book Never Split the Difference.
Exactly. So, Cory, what else do we have for today? Of course, anything that you want to talk about that you guys are doing over at William Wright?
Lots of exciting stuff going on. Now that we're kind of getting through the long weekend here and we're kind of getting back to business, it feels like I think we're going to have to buckle up. We have probably a really, really busy time ahead of us here. Mike kind of alluded to that on the show. When people were asking me about the federal election, like, what are your thoughts? Like, how does that concern anything? Right. Obviously, that's of concern, I think, for anybody out there watching to see how that kind of plays out. But when it comes down to the end of it, if you look at last year, no foreign buyers really to speak of, net negative immigration, no international travel, no international students here. The market was red hot, white hot, as Mike alluded to in the show there. I think heading into this fall, winter, buckle up. We have no inventory, historically low interest rates ahead of us. I was reading some reports where they're estimating there's up to $2.6 trillion in money sitting in the sidelines waiting to be deployed because there's lack of inventory in the real estate world right now. I think real estate's back, and I think it's going to be quite the ride until 2022, Q2, Q3 before we really start to see anything sort of settle down.
And just a question from someone who operates in the residential market, because we saw July and August as like 2 of the lowest inventory months we've had in the past 35 years. Has it been similar in commercial? Like
we always suffer from no inventory, or not should say no inventory, lack of good inventory, right? And then all of a sudden, when the inventory levels start to dip even lower than where they are, and then money becomes as cheap as it is right now. We're listing properties, and they're going millions over asking price. Wow. We're not talking. These are $5, $6, $7, $8 million listings, but they're penciling out at $10 million.
Wow.
$11 million. So they're not just barely going over, and they're generating 6, 7, 8 offers. It's not. It's a function of the time. It's a function of the money, how cheap money is right now. But I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Although we traditionally get a little bit more inventory as we get into fall and spring, the inventory levels are so low right now. They're kind of like unhealthy, for argument's sake. That even if we doubled or tripled the inventory where things are at right now from demand in the marketplace and how cheap money is on the lending side, it won't cause any concern for sellers because there's nothing.
Yeah, actually, we just had Brendan Augmanson on Vancouver Real Estate Podcast, and one of his points was we could double the residential listings right now, and that's what it would probably take to get any kind of balance in the market, which is phenomenal, right?
Oh, it's funny right now because there's stuff that we're working on that's in excess of like 40 million, and you're making like 2 or 3 phone calls, and every phone call is like, "Don't show anybody else. I'll call you in an hour."
Wow.
And it's high demand product in the asset class everyone's looking for that you just can't find. And you go back 3-4 years ago, you might have to flog that for quite some time to even get anyone to even like return your phone call.
Right.
Now they're begging you not to call the next guy. Like, I need half an hour, I'll call you right back.
Wow. And so I think this is the thing. It's right now we're just in the second week of September. Everyone's getting the kids back to school.
Yeah.
But end of the month here is when things are really, really going to pick up, and the fall market's going to be in full swing. So, giddy up, I guess. But Cory, before we cut for the week, how can people find out more about what you guys are up to at William Wright?
They can always visit our website at williamwright.ca. They can always call our Vancouver office at 604-428-5255, or they can email me directly at cory@williamwright.ca. Any other commercial real estate needs, we'll put you in touch with the best broker we got for your asset class and whatever marketplace you are throughout the province.
Fantastic. And you can find this episode and all of the episodes of VREP and VCREP at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com. I'm fired up for next week, Byron Chard. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Subscribe today.